Hello, Anand. Hi, everyone. My name is Trisha. I'm the founder for WeCreate Studio, and this is the whole team of WeCreate Studio here today. WeCreate Studio is an architectural consultancy for the social good. This is our first podcast, and we hope to share more of our learning journeys and our conversations and our awareness from the various projects that I've been working with the non-profit organization in Singapore and overseas communities, looking at community development projects with the larger Singaporeans, and even outside of Singaporeans. I'd like to introduce our team.
Hello, I'm Wen Wei. I'm an architectural associate in WeCreate Studio.
Hi, I'm Idayu. I'm an architectural designer.
Hi, I'm Wei Ping. I'm a social designer. So today, in today's podcast, we'll be talking about the topic of inclusivity in design. So without further ado, let's start with the first question first. So what does inclusive design mean to you? Okay, so to me, the concept of inclusive design is having an environment or space that's suitable or comfortable for a community to live, play, and unwind. So it's the more the action of like bringing together different communities, and at the same time having the opportunity for them to voice their needs and concerns, and also at the same time for them a space to co-produce that needs together. Yeah, it's not really finding that one perfect solution, but it's more of like how these different communities can coexist together in a space and how they themselves can also look at the different needs of different parties and compromise. Yeah, so to me, that is the concept of inclusive design.
Yeah, actually, to add to what Wei Ping was saying, right, I think inclusive design is not just an outcome, but it's also a process. I think to me, the process of being inclusive in our design is even more important than outcome itself. Only through emphasizing on the process itself can we really look at change on a more inclusive manner. A bit cliche, but I think that is the way to go. I think one of the issues in our society right now is we're always looking for outcome without understanding the needs enough. We're always looking for solution without truly understanding needs, especially when it comes to inclusive design. I think it's even more important that we look at there's no one fixed solution for all. So that's why when we were looking at Hello Empathy in our process, I think as a chance for 1 year research with working with the autism community, it really had the time to really reflect and think and listen to other people, user needs, what is really their perspective of what inclusive design is. And one of the biggest takeaway for me during that whole process was the differentiation between what is universal design, inclusive design, and personalized design. And it's not that inclusive design is the ideal scenario, but depending on the situation and the needs that each process is emphasized on.
I agree with Trisha. Sometimes when we do universal design, which is what's required of building codes and everything, we tend to overgeneralize the needs of the different members of the public. That we tend to not really focus on their different needs, like sensory needs, their cognitive needs, and also their emotional needs. So when we really engage with the participants, the users, the eventual people who will use the space, right, then we were able to understand and to really factor in all of their feedbacks and their input, and that will help to make the design cater inclusively for them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think without participatory design, right, which is what we do in our projects, it's sometimes based on what we think we know.
Yeah.
Even as a professional, may not be substantiating enough to justify a design outcome. That's why I think participatory design is very important.
For me, it's like inclusive design. It's just thinking that every time you draw one line or you extrude a model, you know that someone's life or someone out there will be either they would like it, hopefully, or they could be complaining about it.
I think that's a very heavy responsibility of architects.
I don't think it's a responsibility of any profession per se, just that anything you do in a sense is on the computer, because even though it's on computer, it's like almost separated from everything else. But any decision made on that computer or in that meeting or discussion, whatever, has an actual outcome, and the outcome will affect people.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Ripple effect, yeah. Responsibility of a designer, right? Not just any professional.
I think for like design practitioners, I do see them as just like common connectors and coordinators. So the act of like bringing them together in the table, right? And the thing is that I don't really see ourselves or any industry people or jobs as like 100% like one-stop solution provider, because there are some intrinsic issues that I don't think architectural or like even someone who is other practitioner can solve it. Some things are like too deep that they need to solve it over time, and it's not just building a space or like doing some like community art or something that can solve that issue. So I feel that when we come into the community or when you do certain projects, you also have to be mindful about like what is the capacity within me or within the project or within the resources that you are given to actually what kind of change can you enact, and also at the same time like will this change be able to give them a more comfortable space than what it was used to be before? And I think like that is a smaller step that you can take rather than thinking that, oh, I want to change so many issues. It's a bit hard lah.
I think to answer that also, I think one of the things that I don't see like I mentioned, inclusive design to me is a process. So I think Singapore in general is at the infant stage of looking at really what inclusive design is in a very meaningful way, not just following checklists. I think there must be a lot of self-reflection and empathy for your users as part of the process. So it's not so much of what inclusive design is, but it's more like how can spaces be inclusive as how we can cater to them. So if you see as a journey and a process right now at being a baby, trying to understand trying for the society to understand what inclusive design is, we should see each project as a test bed and learn from it. What is missing in our design process is learning from our own design and criticize our own design of the outcome. This learning process must be shared, I think, to all, so that not just architects, right? Not just architects. You mentioned about all designers, also responsibility of designers, so that after learning, each line we lay has more intended use. We know what we know, but if you can share knowledge from what other people has learned, I think that consideration will help designers to make better decisions.
I guess in a way, like, because wherever we are doing things, it's always you're learning from you're using your own experience to go and do that action. And I guess also codes and regulations are in a way like formalizing a requirement that this is the experience that the governments or authorities or they have learned from the past, and they have set it in stone that this is something that you should follow.
I think also talk about how we can reflect inclusivity in our development. So
the key is to be very sensitive in terms of like also choosing the questions that you ask when you engage in them, right? Because there's 101 questions and you can't really ask everything, but you need to cater to that specific group that you have to answer. Like what Trisha mentioned, the intent behind everything that we do. I think that will eventually result with a more sensitive outcome at the end. Yeah.
It really essentially maybe it's a balance also. So like even the guidelines are there, but at the same time like if you follow it too rigidly, right, you also may not have like the same kind of effect as you wanted it to be. They are just meant or there to actually guide you, to really advise you. But after that, it's also based on your own experience and your own advisory and understanding of the community to continue and to see the next step. Yeah,
it's both guidelines as well as your own experience. It's most like historical record, but past performance does not indicate your future performance.
But it's still designer's discretion to make that sound decision.
and foresight.
Their foresight can be broken down into empathy, can be broken down, can assist you. There's many techniques like participatory design, understanding user needs, go through the process, spending time with them, and not say re-adapting, but re-looking at codes and regulations to see whether it's suitable for the area. That's when we discuss with authorities whether certain rules and regulations to cater to certain user groups can be adjusted. I think it's a collaborative effort. If you're looking at societal level, it must be a collaborative authorities together with designers or professionals together with final user. I think you mentioned very good about having user interception choices, giving them choices. I think choices is one of the learning things I learned in my own journey. Design that offer choices to users. This allow inclusivity, or one way to allow inclusivity. Just I mentioned about universal design, that I also touch on. And also, I mentioned the word personalized design. We don't talk about personalized design at all. But there are just that very small minority, 0.0001% of people in our society that cannot handle the usual L-shaped handle due to motor skill limitations or that visual disempowerment where they cannot see where the handle is because of the shininess and the reflectiveness and all. But if you allow choices where handles can be creatively looked at, just as simple as that, I think that sensitivity can be portrayed as one of the many learning points for a more inclusive design. I think choices helps. Allowing users to have the inputs also helps. Sometimes as a designer, we tend to finish the design, right? I think one of the learning point I learned from GOI, a Grounded Initiative project, is we do what is there. We share the design responsibility with the final users and volunteers within code limitations or framework to allow the users to have inputs into the space that they want it to be to shape that output. Just like our project is Roots, right? We give them a framework, but then our client Saru is like learning in his own way, interpreting our what we call mind map and design making and planning. He's also learning, which I'm very encouraged actually. It's more challenging for us to plan, but we're so used to planning, we forget that users on the ground, especially rural communities, they don't plan. But at the same, I'm very encouraged personally with Saru that he is also picking up what we're sharing with him, but interpreting his own way.
Yeah.
We're actually empowering him to be independent, to think for himself in a way. We allow the users to be empowered to have inputs into the output.
Yeah. So like there's a lot of people how they see different forms of inclusivity. So it could be either like me interviewing you beforehand and then like taking your feedback into account of the design, or like me kind of informing you in the middle of the design process, or like towards the end when we build a foundation and then you guys coming in to do the improvements. So there's a lot of different manners and ways of how you see inclusivity. So like now we'll touch on like a bit more about inclusive design in terms of like public spaces. So like I mean, based on your experience of like designing public spaces, standing like ways on how you can see inclusive design being implemented there, or like what does it mean to you in the public space?
I think the nature of public spaces, right, is that you just automatically lean towards the average in terms of like, because it is public. The definition of public is that it has to go towards the average. So it's catered towards designing for majority. For the majority, or a certain average mean point.
Yeah.
Between. So of course there's a weird outliers, but then maybe it's more about trying to carve out portions of where you can adjust that average point rather than trying to get the average point, capture everything.
But one of the conversations that I had with one of our partners, St. Andrew's Autism Center, is looking at breakout spaces. For example, the most common thing that a person with autism will be aware of community with person with autism will be come room. But one thing, while come room can be catered for as a breakout space for a public space at the shopping mall and all, there's also more and more conversation. I'm also learning, big terminology called wellness gardens. What are wellness gardens? What are rooms? But I think we can also move from this, I would say medically supported spaces, but convert it into more average use. So instead of come rooms, we're looking at come spaces, breakout come spaces where everyone can get to benefit from the kind of space. Wellness gardens, instead of not just quiet spaces, wellness garden, but gardens that is allow people of variety of noise tolerance to some extent can also enjoy. So one of the learning I always never forget from Andrew, subtitles. So subtitles were developed for hearing impaired communities. But now everyone is reading subtitles when they do watch Korean shows, Chinese shows, Cantonese shows. Something that was designed for the different needs has benefited the larger communities. So why don't we look at design inclusive spaces, public spaces, where translating creatively medical needs or very specific needs to spaces that can benefit everyone. Yes, there's certain things like we still need degree of interventions, I think, degree. So it's not one absolute. So I'm not saying converting come rooms to come spaces is the right thing. Maybe what's the in-between space between come rooms and come spaces? Something in between. There are certain spaces where personalized design, you definitely need the padded space for person with higher needs on the autism spectrum. then you probably still need that kind of space. But person with dementia, they can still have breakup spaces when they get lost and recover, so they can go on to hopefully find their space and whole again.
What do you think?
So, because I recently did some work with our colleague, she's actually from the spectrum. So, together with her, we actually look at like various calm spaces in terms of like gardens or like places that are available at her case study was the enabling village. So, together with her, from her perspective, I got insights that like she has entered a calm space before and how greatly she benefit from it. So this is just one person from the person of spectrum. But I mean, when we talk about people of the spectrum, there's various degrees. So if you are able to bring this calm spaces to a larger scale, then perhaps a lot more people are able to benefit from it, like what Tricia has mentioned. Yeah. But maybe to touch on that also, like sometimes we, as designers, we design inclusive spaces, but then I think one thing that is very unique about us is that we also, our workspaces are also inclusive in that sense, whereby we invite our colleagues. So for me, that is one way that we try to be inclusive, not only in terms of the way we design, but also in terms of our workspace.
Aspects and I would say more of like add values in terms of the workplace. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, how about Wei?
There's something I was thinking about, which I guess also kind of, in a way, it contradicts what I said.
Yes.
But because I was thinking about it in terms of, I mean, like how public spaces are designed for average, right?
Yeah.
But if the average quality is not even there, right? Then we don't even talk about inclusive design for raising certain groups, right? The whole thing is just not there in the first place. Yeah, so it's like, you know, that graph with the mean graph, right? Like the average is the peak, and then the two sides are the extreme ends. If the whole thing the bell curve, right? If the whole thing is just low, right, then it's bad for everyone, no matter whether you are the average or not, or
Understand.
declaration rate. And honestly speaking, our public spaces are not very good in general.
Is there any examples?
Our pavements are always just generally pedestrians are sidelined compared to like cars and vehicle flow. So it's not very conducive to people, but more for traffic flow. So although it's a public space, I wouldn't call it a very good space in general. Not even talking about inclusive space anymore. It's just poor.
At least meet the universal needs.
Like in terms of strategizing, right? Maybe our effort should be spent on just improving the quality of the whole thing in general first, and then if there's special cases that we require more effort to lean towards or provide additional, then we also have the capacity to kind of include that in as well.
Like you're not ready for stage 2.
Yeah.
You should get level 1 done.
It is very minimum.
Okay. Nice. Any thoughts?
I think I'm more ambitious. Why don't you do stage 1, stage 2 at the same time?
But because what he meant by saying that if you do stage 1, stage 2 at the same time, then it will affect the bell curve.
Because, okay, so it depends on how you see what interior design is. Because I think that, again, I still emphasize on the idea it's a process, open conversation. So, it's a process. So, if we have to adjust our process and the design, why don't we consider what you call stage 2, slightly more inclusive awareness, while we are planning for stage 1 at the same time also. The fundamental needs. So, it can be concurrent. I believe it can be concurrent. But whether we have the knowledge and the awareness to be concurrent, I don't think that.
I think that's the question. So it's like, is the community even aware of like what is their bare minimum needs? Because if the community is able to communicate, right, is the neighborhood or like what the spaces that they're living in now, right, ready to give them the iteration?
That's where I think designer can be empowered. That's where our role is. I always feel that, I mean, this phrase is more to cater for the different needs, but a lot of times the background is person with special needs. They will say they are not so much on being medically disabled, but they're more disabled by the environment more than anything else. But at the same time, to bring that to the next stage. So can we not create an environment that disable them, but more important is motivate and even inspire? So That's where we need to put our designer capacity, creativity to the next level. So we don't just meet the bare minimum. We must be able to test and inspire and even motivate. Because our user knows what they know, right? I mean, that's where participation is. That's where we don't just deliver exactly what user knows. We need to add on our value as a designer to take on what is learned and brought to awareness and bring it in a more creative level and push the line a little bit more to test. If we always status quo, finish up plan 1, we'll never go to stage 2 because they're always trying to meet stage 1. Stage 1 is never good enough because it will be subjective. But if you can push for a stage 2 a little bit more, just a challenge, because I don't know, I mean, let's do the simple thing like ramps. So we always know gradient ramp for the architect 1 is to 12, 1 is to 12, but what exactly is 1 is to 12 for wheelchair users? What is exactly 1 is to 25 to wheelchair users to comply? But we can creatively know the difference between 1 is to 12 and 1 is to 25 by sitting on a wheelchair and rolling ourselves up. Given that we are much stronger and then no caregivers and no support, then we know what's the difficulty they're facing through. Then we can creatively maybe relook at just simple design ramps. And how can we, as a space designer and architect, bring the idea of the need of accessible path, not just ramps, right? Accessible path, and rethink it to be part of the landscape design. So it's not just a path, it's not just a need, it's not just a need. Ramp is a need, but it's an integrated courtyard space or integrated,
such as a loan facility.
It's not a loan facility. So that, to me, we may not get it right all the time, but if we're willing to try and test and work it out users at the ideal MVP, minimum viable prototype, if we have the chance to, or even the cost and time to, that'll be the pushing line as designers, I think. Just push the line a little bit more each time so that we can jump faster. I felt that we don't have enough time. We've been dealing with, we're entering the first world. We already did first world, right? We're already first world. Singapore is already first world. I cannot say entering first world.
Still developing country.
Still developing, we're developing first world country.
Just like stage 1, forever.
We need to inspire. We don't have time. Like, we've been talking about community, you'll be working with those, right? So we're talking about poverty for decades. We cannot be, trying to learn. So each generation is trying to learn, we'll never move. But each generation trying to push the line, the next generation will take on what is learned. We must push the line. I always believe we must push the line. How? Of course, that's where I don't have the absolute answer.
What do you think more? Are you?
Yeah. I think your bar on stage 1 is low.
Too low. My bar on stage 1 too low, right?
That's why you think it's always stage 2 if you do more. Probably the bar stage 1 is quite high.
It's relative lah.
Then maybe it's subjective though. It's also based on learned experience lah. So maybe after that experience of like, you experience seeing like this is not good enough, like this is not good enough, or like a general basic member of public. Yeah. So I think just now you're touching on like the act of iteration, right? So I think to me that is what inclusive design means. So in a public space, so it's more of like an opportunity for you to actually make iterations to certain areas in the public space. And I think for the community to also improve on after what you have done to the space. So I don't think that like even if you give someone a space and then he just thinks that it's not suitable. Like for example, even this arrangement, if you're not comfortable, you'll still shift it by yourself. You don't have to wait for someone that is specialized in building a furniture to help you to move it. Yeah. So I feel that like I believe in if the people are ready, or if the people are actually have that capacity to be inspired, right? They will actually do some action by themselves as well.
It's like stewardship in the sense, like you empower them to steward their own decisions.
Or even a chance stewardship will be ideal, right? Sometimes in a built environment may be a bit challenging. If there is the chance, that would be great. But even if you can't, there must be learnt. The society must be the whole mindset of learnt and improve for designers.
I think the act of delivering something like sustainable and also easy for them to take over, and for them to also kind of like have some old like taste of their own personality.
Yes, spice.
Yeah,
Yeah. Ownership.
Ownership.
Then maybe it's not so much about stage 1, stage 2, but just that not having to restart at the previous stage again for each project, whether each project or each different area. The benefits of that slowly moving out stage 1.1, 1.2
Yeah.
is transferred to the other places, other communities, other projects. Then each project doesn't have to restart from the entire process of having to go through iterations and get over and over again. Because I think maybe because it's also written regulation, that's why we take the regulations as the basis, because that's what I said.
That's the basic.
That's the basic.
Yeah.
And every child improvement is always reliant on the regulations to change as an improvement, as a moving on to the next stage, rather than I guess maybe the intervals between each failure and each iteration is a bit too big, and also not being shared with different other projects or other communities.
I think fraternity also, right? So fraternity has a idea of traits. So each trait must move together. Each trait. So you say, for example, architecture, a space not just effect by architects, right? A space effect by architects, engineers, then see designers, idea, I don't know, whole team, the entire thing. The whole team needs to move so that this iteration can be effected at varying level. So it's not just one person trying to pull a whole entire trolley, but the whole team is trying to think of it to reinvent the trolley to move faster. I think in Singapore is small. Even though we are very dense, we are very small. In the public space, on the output of other space, there's usually the few groups of designers who has the input of it. Even product designers and industrial designers also has the input of it. So if everyone has the same awareness, I think this trolley can be reinvented to move faster. So it's not just a one person's role, but multiple roles, including authorities who set the base guideline. We at least do the trolley based on the base guideline, and everyone have the interventions or the intention with the single heart to move forward.
I think you brought up a good point about collaboration.
Collaboration.
Not just within the, sometimes we tend to be more in our own bubble, architects only, right? But if you were to think about it when designing a space, sometimes it requires a lot from a lot of different people. So that collaboration is needed, definitely. But I think the most important thing is about communication and also the intent that you have. So if everybody have the same intent or roughly within the same line of thought, then maybe we can push this idea further, whereby inclusivity is not just about the space but also the entire environment. Like what you mentioned at the very start, inclusivity to you is an environment, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's also a proper perspective in that. Say, for example, the economist or the accountant says that if you do this, you affect the financial of the project. That's also a valid concern in that is their perspective, which is, you can't say that you make this project more expensive, then someone cannot afford it. That's also excluding someone who's in a sense. But the act of prioritizing is also excluding some other things.
So I think that's why, again, back to the title of universal design, inclusive design, and personalized design. So we never work alone. It's always a group. This group needs to decide what is the end point for each of the projects so that we can keep learning. Who to include, I think, is also can be discussion, right? So usually the output or the users, or I think that not users, the custodian of the space usually will know who are the users or the planned users. Also, our demographics in Singapore is also changing. If you talk about Singapore, if you talk about overseas, it's even more complex. The political awareness, the political and stability may also change the effect and the users of the groups also. So the projects overseas projects is more volatile. On local project, actually, to be honest, is more stable. So usually, sometimes that's where I think engagement comes in. We can identify certain user groups. Like user groups can also lead us to other user groups that we may not even aware of. So if we see the participatory design process as a learning point for the whole entire thing, in order for us to come to a consensus as a team, who should we focus on, what should we focus on, and at what point do we run or effect the project, that mutual agreement should be there. It's a shared responsibility. So it's not us only to decide.
Yeah, I don't think it's I feel that I understand both your points, but I think that it's more of bringing the committees to the table, but they themselves are also understanding to say that like if I die need a ramp there, what is the pros and cons of am I taking out certain like am I taking a few chunk out of the court and then somebody could not play the basketball court. So I feel that if they are aware or like in the table itself when this discussion happen, they themselves know that like what is my priority right now, what is the priority of the community. It's always they are not inside this conversation, and then when changes happen, they'll be like, why do you take out certain things in my neighborhood? I didn't ask for this change, or like you are jeopardizing a part of the community if you do this act. So I feel that it's more of like they themselves made a decision on like what they should prioritize, and they come to a consensus to say that like, okay, so we all kind of agree that like these changes is for now, but at the same time it's not forever. In the future, if there are more percentage of like that particular community that really needed that particular facility, obviously the neighborhood space will change more towards their needs, because they became more of the bigger community that needs. Yeah, so I do believe that every single neighborhood shouldn't be set in stone, but they should always be evolving and adapting.
So degree of participation and involvement here. What is the degree? Almost, of course, I can tell you the whole entire theory about degree of participation, and not every project requires you to participate in. Actually, to be honest. So, of course, that's where I think I use the word professional, make the decision or sound decision based on input experience and past experience and inputs from certain groups of users. Even we say community, right? We tend to group communities into user groups. User groups is like who we choose to user groups to have the input of conversation will determine your outcomes and ideal outcome. Yes, correct, exactly. So one thing we have to be aware of is also degree of participation to inform what would possibly be an image of an inclusive design. Yeah, so this is our podcast number. Next one. Next one, come here. It was me. Wait. So, I think it takes a group of people as part of the participatory process to be ready for mindset change. To be ready. I'm not saying we must change our mindset. That's where participatory or social designers, social designers and participatory designers come to play. How do we curate that process so that everyone has considered? I'm not saying we will change their mind, but we have put all the possible outcomes, even possible scenarios, on the table first before they conclude. They must know that they are not coming in to put in their selfish needs, but it's a collective decision that they're representing, the responsibility that they're representing a whole group of people. You can't, if you're going to design a space for 3 blocks of HDB, not HDB, but usually a neighborhood court will involve at least 10 HDB blocks. You can't get all the 10 HDB blocks of people coming in for engagement, but usually you will get your more vocal auntie uncles. This is where you decide about user needs and user groups, right, to come into the conversation. They must come in with the mindset and a trust to the social designers or the facilitators that we are having an open conversation here, that we must be ready to open to hear the conversations. We're not saying we all know all, we have to write. They must be open, must come in with a level of intent that they're open for conversations. But we are hearing each other.
I think even situations like that, right? There are people who are hard to bring that, man.
Correct. Yeah, it's not.
And I think at the same time, right, what would help as a facilitator, or even like when you are hosting some place, right, is that you don't have the mindset to say that like, oh, just because you can't bring in the I think of the greater good community, you are wrong. I think for them it's more of like, usually you will just give them the support to say that like the closing the loop part, which is that you come back and check in with them. And then like you check with the representative, you check with the community to see then like, oh, how's the space, how is it serving you? I think that's where you gain their trust. Because if you already just say like, oh, this is wrong, you can't propose this kind of thing, then they'll just be like, oh, then you already got answer what? Then why do you even ask me? So I feel that support that they need in the beginning, and also at the same time the feeling that their decisions are being respected. I think that's very important. And the fact that you guys didn't, that they understand that you guys are designers, they're surrounded by always architect, all these kind of people. They want to have the feeling, they say like, oh, I also want to feel I have the right to make a decision without anybody passing on judgment to say this is wrong. Why you put the position of the block like that? Like it feels like, oh yeah, they are uneducated and all that kind of thing. They are not as expert in the particular field. Yeah. So I feel that like the after action, the after support that you give them, that's a relationship building, and that's where all the trust could happen, and that's where I feel that the mindset change could happen too. Yeah, I think it's the follow up part.
Actually, I'm sure we have not all those questions, but we're really dabbing into it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think just I think we're delving too deep.
But I think actually I just need to finish this one. So respect. Yeah. So what do I say again? The 5 hard ways. Sure. So I think some loving things and takeaway was when we first okay, Hello Empathy is a card game. So just to share everyone, Hello Empathy is a conversational card game. A bit of self-promote, but this is very interesting how to cut. So that allows designers to get our Hello Empathy framework or empathy framework to start their design. So although our initial intention when we first started this whole entire conversation research was, when we first started this project was coming up with understanding what inclusive design is, and even take out how coming out of framework. But 1 year forward, post then, I also realized that we don't need to teach designers how to design. We just need to share with them how we can approach a more empathetic design approach, which is actually towards an inclusive design approach, in order for them to be more aware about what they need to consider when they design. Right? We never need to teach designer how to do this. That's actually a very long way to design tools. So I think one of the things we came up with as part of the framework or the values behind is the five hard ways we call it. So empathy framework. So the first thing we set on was respect and dignity. Even though it was catered and learned from the autism community, but as part of the learning process to facilitate our subsequently, we realized that people forget this step. Straight away, usually you go to any first station, sometimes introduce yourself, hello, my name is whatever, and I come from here, and then we start to roll the role clear. But actually, it's very important to have everyone be aligned mentally, even emotionally on the same table before it can even start a conversation of discussion with an open heart and open mindset, right? So dignity is all about respect. It's also about saying that everyone's view is not the endpoint, it's not the correct. Not the correct, but it's not the endpoint.
No right.
Not right or wrong. Not right or wrong. Not right or wrong. It's only to your needs. Then we can talk about understanding the user needs and the whole process, whatever process you can do, the 5 hard ways, and then connect. And then one more thing in our empathy framework is also internalize. So our first step was actually internalize and then spread the word, right? Internalize is something not just analyzing. Internalize is also reflect. It's not just collecting data points, which a lot of social design research tend to end up with, and then consolidating, analyze, and you're doing the usual output and action list. But it's also an internalize as a designer what has just went through and all. So dignity, respect is the starting point. Internalize is not the end point, but it's a necessary means, and eventually whatever output they do, it can be shared in a larger community, which is our 5th hard ways in our whole process. So I think that kind of summed up, even though it was for a research framework that we did for Empathy, I think these values can be shared in many levels for designers to commence their engagement process, for designers to be on the same page that not all of us are entering the same discussion in the same mind frame. If you get Auntie Susan from block 56, she just rushed back from the market, so she's very panicky and then thinking about what to cook for lunch and dinner and all. You don't expect her to come into this table, having a discussion, and know that exactly we are contributing in the same manner. I think respecting that everyone is on a different page is important, and the stage of their life also. Yeah. Okay.
A very crude way to describe it.
Crude way.
A very crude way to describe it.
What?
Okay.
What she said?
Like, how can my selfish needs and someone else's selfish needs becomes our selfish needs?
Correct. So I think that's all we had for the discussion about inclusivity in design. So stay tuned for our next podcast. and we'll see you then. So, bye.